Yeah.
A very good and enthusiastic morning to one and all present here. My co host, Charudat Malhara, and I, Isha Gujarati, warmly welcome you to the third day of National Human Resource Development Network's 24th National Conference.
NHRDN is the largest body of human resource professionals with a legacy of over 37 years. It was founded by visionaries like Dr. T.V. Rao, Dr. Uday Parikh, and various other eminent leaders. NHRDN has over 30 chapters across India with the overseas footprint in Singapore. This year's theme, as we all know, is the 4M, the metamorphosis of human resources in the realm of meta, mega, me, and more. Now, I would request Mr. Arun to give the opening remarks for the day. Over to you, Mr. Arun.
Hey, thank you so much, Isha and Charudat. Great to be here at the 24th annual National Conference of NHRDN. I've been a volunteer with NHRDN for the last 18 years now, and it's really a privilege to be here amongst the midst of Dr. T.V. Rao, who's the founder of NHRDN, Dr. Arvind Agarwal, who's a very senior and respected professional. It's really a pleasure and honor to be here today. I would like to just quickly remind all of us of the last 2 days, Power Pack days. We had day one focusing on the meta, which really spoke about everything in the macro world, the metaverse happening, economic trends, socio-economical changes, political trends, and we had a host of speakers enlightening us with data points, insights, and viewpoints, which really helped us understand what's happening in the big bad world out there. On day two, we had the focus on Mega, sorry, which focused on the organizational part. As a student of OB, I've learned that have to look at the organization, the team, and the self. So we followed a similar pattern where we looked at the meta first, the mega next, where we looked at the organizational level. We looked at DEI, some very passionate discussions, some exciting fireside chats, and a lot of insights flowing through, ending with our own favorite DDD taking us through a very interesting musical evening. As we come back on day three, I have the pleasure of introducing to you the concept of me. I'm reminded of the saying, Yatha Chitte Tatha Pinde, and Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande, which means that what you think is what your body reflects, and what your body reflects is what the reality around you turns out to be. A little bit like that dialogue from the Shah Rukh Khan movie Om Shanti Home, which says that अगर आप किसी चीज को पूरे शिद्दत से चाहो तो सारी कायनात उसे आपको हासिल करने में मदद करती है. And that really is the focus of today. We've got exciting leaders coming today who really are going to take you through the impact of these meta and mega trends for you as the individual. And that's the focus of our day three, which is all about me. So, without further ado, I don't want to stand between you and the leaders whom we've requested to be with us today. So, I'll pass it back to Charudat and Isha. Thank you again, all of you, to be in the conference and support this event. Let's be part of NHRD and this movement to really create impact for our fraternity. So, with that, I'll hand it to our young leaders, Isha and Charudat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arun sir, for those extremely energetic words. Now, let's move on to the session. HR is the soul of an organization. It is the HRs who manage and nurture the most valuable asset of an organization, the people. Who could be a better person to talk about HR than the very father of human resource development himself? Dr. T.V. Rao has over 42 years of extensive work experience in the field of HRD. He is the founder and the very first president of our NHRDN and the first honorary director of Academy of HRD India. It is indeed a dream come true moment and a fanboy moment for me to host you, sir. Thank you so much for taking out time and joining in. Along with him, we have an extremely talented person, Dr. Arvind Agrawal, who is a master certified coach and an executive leadership consultant, having extensive experience as a business leader in some of the most reputed organizations in the country like RPG, Xerox India, Escorts, and so on. I would now request Dr. Arvind Agrawal to take forward the session. I also request all the participants to actively participate in the event and please ask questions in Q&A section as we'll have a Q&A session in the last 10 minutes. Over to you, sirs.
Right. Thank you, Charu. And thank you, Arun, for those glowing remarks. And that's a great start for the day. And befitting the tradition, I think we need to initiate the session with our Guru, Dr. Rao, first sharing his thoughts, and then I will come following his footstep. So, with my Pranam TV, over to you.
Thank you very much. Pranam to all of you. What a great pleasure to be with youngsters like Arun, Isha, and Charu. I want to start by thanking both on behalf of Arvind and myself, S.V. Nathan, Anand, Vijayan, and all those who are responsible for getting us into this session. I think it's such a pleasure to be here. I've been following some of the sessions yesterday and day before, and it's a marvelous experience. I used to think when we created a new benchmark of National HRD Network Conference in the year 1987, I all the time compare every conference with the kind of standards that we have put. In spite of all the problems we have had of the pandemic, I think you have set some excellent standards, starting on time, wonderful speakers. I think what is the most interesting to me is the consistency and the depth to which all the speakers have gone. Thank you and congratulations for all of you who are involved. The theme we discussed that we are going to be talking is research on human capital. It's actually, the whole thing came about out of a work which Arvind has initiated on baking of HR leaders. One fine morning, Arvind called me up to say that he was very impressed with this article of Warren Bennis on crucibles of leadership, which of course we have been using in many of our programs. And he said that, look, I think I have a number of questions, and why don't we do a study of the Indian HR leaders, the kind of crucibles that they go through and so on. Now, to me, the importance of HR leadership is because I consider HR leaders as creators of human capital. The beauty about human capital is this is unperishable. The more you use human capital, the more it multiplies. Unlike the other capitals, I think this is such a wonderful capital. It decides how much you contribute, and it keeps, it can fluctuate. The human capital includes, most of you know, knowledge capital, relationship capital, emotional capital, spiritual capital. Nowadays, people talk of happiness. Happiness is also a part of the emotional capital. Engagement is a part of the, everything that we have been talking in the last couple of days is nothing but focusing on human capital. And we strongly believe that HR leaders are the creators of this human capital. Many HR leaders may not realize, and you don't always have to be a top level leader to create human capital. You can be even a young leader, and you can create human capital by doing the kind of things that you may be doing to help people to acquire knowledge and so on. We have a strong belief, and this belief is born out of our research now, but I have a strong belief good CEOs or good HR leaders, or even if they are not by themselves HR people, they have good CHROs. And good CHROs build good leaders, including good CEOs. So if you have a good CHRO, he could really make you a leader. In fact, I was just wondering about the chairman of various boards of the management schools, B schools and such higher education institutions. When I look at some of the excellent schools, they are all governed by chairmen who have had good HR leaders. You go through this IIM A, B, XLRI, all these, and then look at the chairman, and then look at the kind of HR people they have. So it's not only the HR influences the chairman to be a good chairman of the boards, and after all, these boards are creators of human capital. So I strongly believe well-managed boards of institutions have CEOs who themselves are good leaders. From all senses, HR plays a critical role. That is why when Arvind got to me almost about 5-6 years ago, Arvind, I think you called me up to say that, TV, why don't we do this? And I have readily agreed. And I think since then on, I think it's largely, last 4 years, Arvind has put in a lot of hard work. We first of all identified these HR leaders. We identified about 12 criteria criteria like these leaders should be people who have made an impact, who made a difference in the lives of others, sometimes may have positions, sometimes I think may have even authored and accepted by peer groups and so on, about a dozen such kind of criteria. And when we started listing, we found, I remember this exercise we had done about 5 years ago, pre-pandemic. If we have to do this exercise, that time we got about 70 names, shortlisted 70 names. But I think, Arvind, if we have to do it now, it may be 700 or even 7,000. I think last 2 years, the kind of leadership that has come about, I consider, listening to some of the talks here, Arvind, I think every speaker I consider as a HR leader. Even the youngsters who are anchoring, the way they are marvelously doing the job, if we get deeper into them, I think they are HR leaders. But going back to our work, I think, friends, both Arvind and I started by asking a few questions. Who are these leaders? How are they baked? What are the kind of crucible experiences they had? What qualities do they exhibit? What lessons can be drawn to develop HR professionals as leaders? So our whole effort is that if we are able to make this study, ultimately we should help many more HR professionals to be made into leaders. Just yesterday we had this very interesting session by two CEOs, Alka Mittal and Amit Malik. And if you remember, those of you who attended their sessions, they were talking of crucible experiences. Like when Alka Mittal said, the experience she remembers was when she was walking on the railway track to vacate some people who illegally occupied in Assam, and that made the difference in her life. Or Amit Malik talked about what he has been told never to reveal his identity until the end when he is selling Horlicks, and always will the kind of advice that was given to him and so on. I think these are all very interesting crucible experiences. This is how we started, and I will pass it now on to Arvind to share more of the exciting experiences we have had in this journey of identifying, interviewing these 30 leaders, writing their stories, and after we completed the stories, the kind of analysis we have done and the kind of findings that we have are quite exciting. I would only mention one finding: the competency model that emerged, the competency list that has emerged at the end of our analysis of these 30 leaders is no different than SHRM's competency model or CIPD's competency model, or even the HR scale of National HRD Network itself, which I think Arvind managed and so on. I think this was a very interesting kind of a finding that we had. I am not going into the details. I am sure Arvind, through his description of the kind of experiences we have had and so on, will tell us a lot more about the insights and any other significant experiences. Arvind, off to you.
Right. Well, thank you, Professor Rao. I could not have embarked upon this without someone like Professor Rao as a margdarshak. And I learned that hard way when I had registered for PhD, that you don't go very far unless you have a research guide of eminence. And therefore, I was very fortunate that Professor Rao readily agreed to indulge my curiosity of wanting to discover the crucible experiences which these HR legends, very eminent HR professionals in the country, have gone through. And when I read Warren Bennis' article on Crucible of Leadership, this was a natural question that came in my mind, that people whom we know, we rub shoulders every day in national conferences, in HRD forums, in organizations, what kind of life experiences have they gone through? What were points of inflections in their lives? What choices did they make? Who were the major influencers? And how did they become who they have become? So first was identification of the HR leaders, and that was not very difficult. Like Professor Rao just now mentioned, we had long list of 70, but then we applied some criteria, and Professor Rao was fresh from his book, Effective People, I think it was 2015 that your book
Yes.
came out,
That's right, yes.
and it had 10, 12 criteria, and we found them very useful. And in nutshell, it meant people who have made difference in lives of people they've worked with, and they have made difference in the lives of the organizations that they have been part of, and beyond the organization to the profession and the society. So through these criteria, we began to look at and we came to 30 HR leaders. By no means we are claiming that these are the only 30 HR leaders. I'm sure there are many more out there. And like Professor Rao just now rightly mentioned, that perhaps today, if we were to do the research, there would be 700 people that we have to research because they are at different phases in their career, but they're all very effective people. And these are people you know them. I think most of them you will know. People like Anand Nayak, Anil Khandelwal, Anil Sachdev, Akhil Basrai, Shantruk Mishra, Satish Pradhan, S.V. Nathan himself, Visti Banerjee, Vivek Pranjpe, Yogi Ram. These are all who's who of HR profession in the country. And you've heard them, you've experienced them in a variety of different ways. And when we began to ask them, and I think we had a very long meetings with them, lasting 5 to 8 hours in each case, several meetings. Fortunately, we had started this pre-COVID, so we could meet them in person. And during the COVID, of course, it was all Zoom call. And having completed those, we were struck. We were struck as to how little we knew them. We knew only the tip of the iceberg. The struggle that they have gone through, the exciting journey that they have gone through, people who have influenced them, kind of families they have come from. Many of them came from
We lost you, Arvind.
yeah. Can
Yeah,
you
go
hear me
ahead.
now? Yeah.
Back, yeah.
So many of them came from very modest families. They had tough time making two ends meet. Some of them could not pay the fees for eminent professional institution, so they had to opt for more modest colleges. And yet, all of these families, all of these modest schools and colleges shaped their lives, built their character, which is why the word baking is very relevant. Step by step, they moved forward. And we found, irrespective of their differences, there was a pattern that emerged when we looked at all the 30 HR leaders' life journey. And there are lessons for parents, there are lessons for people who run school and colleges, there are lessons for teachers. Teachers have been very impactful at even in the primary school as well as in the professional institutes. And people they have worked with in the organizations, their bosses. Some of them were unpleasant bosses, some of them were very demanding bosses, some of them were role model bosses, but all of them have been impactful. So all of these we find there is a pattern. And in this forum today, let's talk about just a few of those patterns which we saw, which are relevant to the context of an organization, as many of you are building your HR career, and there might be some important lessons for you to take from. So the first one which we discovered is that a lot of them landed with very routine jobs. People talk about that the first job and the organization is very impactful in shaping the career, which indeed it is. and yet you may not have a full control on the nature of job that you are given once you enter an organization. And interesting thing was what they made out of those routine jobs. They converted those routine jobs into a learning experience, and those learnings remained with them for life. Important thing was that they had a learning mindset. So the nature of job was less important. The learning mindset, the curiosity was more important. That is the first lesson that comes through. The second, we were struck that of 30 leaders that we were studying, all of them, except only one person, because that person came from sales and consulting route, all 29 had an immersive experience in industrial relations. And by industrial relation, I don't mean just battling with the union, that too, but in addition, just being with the people at the front line and learning lessons from them has been very impactful. One of the HR leader told me at the time of interview that he was having a dilemma when a worker walked up to him to say that he wanted a provident fund loan. And this HR leader knew the HR policy, and he said, you're not eligible, you will not get it. So he went back, but then he came back and he said, you're coming from a very highly reputed institute. He happened to be from one of the IIMs. And is your job only to tell me that I'm not eligible by reading the policy? And he said that was so provocative, and it began to tell me what the purpose of HR manager is. So industrial relation meant connecting with grassroots level people, whether you are in a service industry, whether you are in a manufacturing environment, regardless to where you are in your career, if you have not had industrial relation experience, our learning from these 30 leaders' life story is that go for it. Find an industrial relation assignment, at least for a substantive period of 2 to 3 years. That was a very important learning, and it was 29 out of 30. So that was quite remarkable. Another pattern we found was the exposure to business. We talk about the business partner role of HR, but rather than only being on the sideline, several of these HR leaders actually plunged into taking the business responsibility. For a substantive period of good 2 to 3 years, they were having accountable business role. And this was again impactful because they could see what HR means from the other side of the table. So this is another lesson that comes out, that somehow if you get an opportunity to move into a line function for a period of time, 2 to 3 years at least, left to me, and if I were in a decision making position, I will make it compulsory for every HR person to go through a 3-year line experience. That's another important lesson that we learned. We then learned that boss's impact is enormous. Bosses are mentor, they're coaches, they're guide, and working under demanding boss is as important as working under a role model boss. So again, the lesson that comes is don't look for only role model bosses. That is important, of course, in shaping your future, but equally go for demanding bosses who can give you tough assignments, who could be very critical of what you deliver, and who can put your nose on the grind. Going through such experience is again something which is a truly crucible experience worth having. What we learned is that regardless to the socio-economic condition of the family, regardless to the kind of school they went through, the kind of jobs that they had, and how they converted these jobs into a learning experience, these were the crucible of experiences that these HR leaders went through. And that is how they became who they have become. No research is complete. It only paves the way for more researches. It raises more questions. And we certainly need to study the crucible of experiences that younger HR leaders are going through in today's time. And what lessons can we learn from them? And I do hope that many of you would get inspired by reading these life stories and will further conduct a similar research covering younger people, besides charting your own path for building future of your career. So we would be, with these brief comments, open to the questions. And let me see if there are any questions which have come.
I just want to add a couple of comments, Arvind. I think that's an
Yeah.
excellent description. Finally, I hope when the book comes out, you will all enjoy reading a whole chapter on competencies. What are the competencies that these 30 leaders have exhibited? More importantly, we discovered values. And nowadays, we talk very much about octopus values, how an organization can promote octopus values. But we tried to see this also. It is in the case studies, how much open are they, how much trusting or trustworthy are they, how much collaborative are they by nature. So I think we found that a good number of octopus values, not all, but some of the values are weaker, but that doesn't matter. I think these are all successful leaders. So a full chapter is devoted to this. And I think the last one, as Arvind was saying, we have drawn implications for parents and for families. How do you nurture, create, how do you create the kind of experiences that would build a leader? And for schools and colleges, higher educational institutions, and also for the boss, you as a boss, what kind of experiences can you create? And you as in your first job, how do you get the best out of your first job and so on? So the last chapter is a pretty short chapter. I think is likely to give a lot of these insights which Arvind is mentioning. So our entire our effort in this is to, as Arvind has rightly said, to get people to be inspired. And now we are planning, I think the book, they may take some time, maybe September, October, this is what I think the publisher has said. We have had the challenge of making it as short as possible, so it still comes out to be some 500 and odd pages, I assume. Finally, we just have to see. The ambition, the aspiration we have is we want to use this to train large number of other HR professionals. For example, one of the ideas I have is each chapter can take up, once the book is out, this as a project. Every year they should produce about 30 leaders or 10 leaders, 15 leaders. So imagine 30, 40 chapters. Every year you inspire 900 people. I think this will be, we have done a good job. Also, we are planning to get back to some of these institutions like IIMs or XLRI, Xavier University, and see if we can offer a course which is a project-based course which requires the students to document their experience. Read this and then go and then search for leaders and document them and come up with your own lessons. So I think the next 2 to 3 years, if everything goes well, we should be able to produce a lot of leadership thought, and which contributes to, as I mentioned in the beginning, human capital formation. We strongly believe it is the HR people, not necessarily those who are designated as HR, but it is HR oriented people who have the tremendous capability and opportunity to build human capital, not only in organizations but everywhere, including the country and so on. This is our pious hope.
So, Professor Rao,
Open to
I,
yes.
I just wanted to add a point that has come up through these study of these 30 leaders, and that message is for teachers, because there are a lot of teachers in this conference as well, as I understand. And all of the 30 HR leaders acknowledged that they were greatly benefited by the personal connect that they had with some teachers at various stages in their lives. And even though they were not necessarily good students, in fact, some of them even failed, they were bunking classes. So some of them were very mediocre students, but yet they got the personal attention from a teacher. So a teacher's role in character building, in shaping the individual's career choices, and holding the person's interest, that has been widely acknowledged by all the 30 HR leaders. In the manner they taught the subject, not just the subject itself.
Yeah. Well, two of the names that came up even in this conference, somebody mentioned, like Pandirajan, I think, mentioned about Pulin Garg,
Okay.
and another mentioned about Father McGrath.
Right.
So these are just illustrations. I think just
Yes.
even in this conference, I think the teachers are are there, good
No, it's
teachers.
so true. I mean, all the 30 leaders acknowledged there were people who were reluctant to give even examination, and a teacher traveled 4 kilometers at 5 in the morning in the winter to persuade the student that no, you must come and give the examination. So that was, and he says that was life changing. To see the teacher's interest in me, that itself moved me to excel in that particular subject, which he was shying away from actually going anywhere near.
We are open to questions and
Yeah, let's
comments.
see if there are questions. Yeah, so there are some questions.
On my screen, I find comments, not
Uh,
questions.
any
If you find
specific
anything on screen.
any specific qualities required for the current and future HR professionals required to create impact for people and business? And this, so, and what your views on crafting a balance between touch and tech aspect of HR to add value
Maybe
to
Arun, can
employees?
you help us if you are not able to
I,
see the screen? Can you help us with these
so,
questions?
so I can take this question about touch and technology aspect. So, as I see, the technology is an enabler that can help you do a lot of things quicker, faster, and more comprehensively. But it's not a substitute for touch. You have to find ways of connecting with people, like we have all found during the 2 years of COVID. We have all been connected, we've all been in touch with each other. So, technology enabled us. So, leveraging technology for better connect, better touch is very, very important. And that is how you get insight about what the individual genuinely wants. And you can make a difference in that person's life, thinking. And quite often, I see there are sometimes preferences to only look at the statistics and not go beyond the statistics to look at the real person and connect with the real person. For growing to be a great leader, connect and personal touch is the most important. Professor Rao, you'd like to add anything to that?
No, I was not able to read the queue, so I just got the Q&A. So I'll go ahead, Darwin, if there is any other question.
So there was a question about qualities that you believe current generation HR professional would need, distinct from qualities which may have been relevant until now.
Well, I am not sure if the qualities the current generation would need for the future, besides I think whatever our book talks about. My personal view is that last 2 to 3 years have brought in a lot of changes which may not have been captured by the leaders that we have talked about. For example, I strongly feel, I think there is a overall appreciation of the quality of learning, the need to constantly learn and have a purposive life and things like that. In the day before yesterday's session by Joe, she talked of, I think the career, anymore career is going to be the future skills that you have. Skills is a future career, no more any designation, things like that. I think there is a lot of insights that are coming from this. But if you ask me from the book, I would say, I think values are very, very important, and learning as a value becomes very important. Humility as a value becomes very important if you look at all these kind of people. I think empathy, ability to manage difficult bosses, not losing your sense of constantly learning and so on. Anyway, I think there are more when you see the thing, and I don't want to claim that I think it's going to be an exhaustive, because the world is constantly changing, but it certainly finds a great base for future.
There is a question, Professor Rao, which I will take. This is a question about what should parents do to young children if they want them to be great leaders. So this is so we did a study what kind of a family, what kind of parenting our HR leaders experienced early in their lives. And irrespective of the socio-economic background, it was interesting that in all cases, there was one particular streak which was very evident, and that is they drew child's attention to larger causes. Typically, what happens is parents invariably talk about that you must study, you must excel in your studies so that you get a good job, and a lot of focus goes in that. But the families these 30 HR leaders experienced, they were, in addition to this kind of a focus on studies, they were also encouraged to do something about the community, the society, and the nation. Each one of them, whatever little, either they were raising some kind of a fund for war widows, some was going to Farakha Dam to do a Shramdan, somebody was just helping the neighborhood children for studies. So in small ways, but importantly, working for larger cause was drilled in their mind by the parents early in their lives. And today I find, and I was talking to some of my neighbors who are raising young children, the focus is that they must excel in their studies, They must get admission in the best of colleges so that they have a good job. But they need to look beyond what they can do for the family, community, and the nation. Connecting the child to those larger causes, that becomes very important in character building and for developing the leadership of the kind that we're talking about.
There are three questions here which are somewhat related. Arvind, I'll take that up. One is on HRD missionary. The second is on how to become a business partner. And third is something on the contributions to the community. First thing that I think I have always maintained, this is more of my personal view, I'm sure Arvind also agrees with this, that HR and business are two sides of the same coin. In fact, I quite often am against talking HR as a business partner. You are not a partner, you are a part of the business. You want to use the term partner, you are only talking of the half, but there can be no business without people, and all businesses are meant for people. I think this is something. So the question of HR becoming a business partner is a question not even to be asked. Because how can you serve the people who are working for a business without knowing what business they are into? I think it is an integrated part of it. It's two sides of the same coin. So I think that question need not even be asked. You have got to be, you understand business, then only you can help people to get engaged better and so many other things. Second question on HRD missionary taking back seat. I think two things we need to differentiate. You can be a HR professional and those who are not HR professionals. All CEOs are not HR professionals, but you cannot be a successful CEO if you are not HR driven. I think this is what you need to understand. Every human being has to be HR driven. Even a child has to be HR driven. And what is HR driven? Discover constantly your potential, understand yourself, and that is what the significance of titling today as me and my world, myself. I think that is the most important thing. So the moment you take the hat of a HR professional, HRD missionary is always there. It can never take a back seat. It is always there if you consider yourself as a professional in HR. But if you are not a HR professional, you may be whatever you are, you have got to be learning driven, purpose driven, happiness driven, all those kind of things. For that you don't need to carry the title. The third question, when we started actually this work, we didn't use serving community as one of the criteria for identifying our leaders. But surprisingly, when we concluded, we find a large part of HR leaders started working for larger cause, be it starting schools, be it I think even looking at business, like in the case of ITC, the way they have started started focusing on farmers. The entire orientation Anand talks about has changed to look at helping larger number of people. So you find concern for the society as very much a part of these, although it was not a criterion that we have used in terms of our choice. Would you agree with that, Arvind?
Yeah, and I also wanted to add to what you said about the business partnership, because often it gets misconstrued as serving the business.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to serve the business, but not at the expense of looking after people, because you are the bridge between the people and the business. You need to be a business partner, so you understand the business need, but you also have advocacy role to ensure that people's interests are not compromised. And in our study of 30 HR leaders, and I see we are running at the end of the moment, there are people who translated the tough decisions in a very meaningful way, in a humane way, even if it meant working 24/7 to ensure that the people interest is not compromised. So I'll end here. I see our moderators giving us messages that we are at 10:30 right now. And there you go.
Extremely sorry, sir. We had to
Right, Charu,
keep
over
that.
to you.
No, that's your job.
But sir, it was really amazing to listen to you, to listen both of you. Even at the backstage, I was having a great time. Your journey and how how you developed and how you came here. It was really amazing, sir. So, yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Arvind and Dr. TV Rao. I'm really very happy and honored and privileged to be hosting you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll move
Thanks.
to the next
Bye for
section.
now.
Yeah. Bye, sir. Thank you.
All the
Bye.
best. Have a great
All
day.
Thanks.
Thank
All
you,
of you.
sir. Yeah.